the stress of having an upcoming competition, or the stress of a stressful job, or family stress. Things that contribute to feeling stressed overall could increase cortisol levels. And in today's world, it seems like nobody is immune to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown, for joining us on Staying Ageless. I am super excited to chat with you about human performance. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what led you to get into naturopathic medicine in the first place.
Oh, yes. I had an accident my senior year in college. I had on track to get my business management degree, and I was a couple weeks from graduating with that. And I had an accident, and that sort of threw me into the medical system. And my orthopedic doctor sort of inspired me to pursue medicine. And I had to go back to do all of my science prerequisites. And so I took about 2 years to do that. And I was spending time with different types of doctors. And I spent some time with a naturopathic doctor and thought, that's how I want to practice. And so that sort of put me down that road. And I'm glad I took that path.
Super cool. And what led the interest in human performance specifically?
Well, that I sort of I've always been interested in sports and health, and trying to get the most out of the human body. And when I was in my residency after naturopathic medical school, I did a 1.5 year residency in Tacoma, Washington, and ended up taking on a minor role in a semi-professional sports team there. And then that sort of really gained a lot of momentum in terms of working with athletes and people who are athletically minded. And I sort of carried that back into my practice, and found that some people were sort of seeking me out because of that. And it sort of snowballed from there. And to the point where in 2018, I decided to sort of shift my focus from general practice to sports specific practice. So I'm currently, my practice is kind of in between the traditional, somewhere in between the traditional musculoskeletal orthopedic type of practice and the conventional provider. I'm sort of in that space right in between there. And I just really try to maximize that area in between those two areas, and help my patients recover from injuries faster, get more while they're competing, and just trying to optimize their health overall.
Super cool. So what I found so fascinating about you is that you approach human performance, but through different body systems. Can you tell us about the body systems and what they can tell us about our health overall? Because I know that performance is definitely something athletes are looking at, but the average person, even though we don't think about it as much, we can also benefit from increasing our performance.
Right. Good question. That is, I really tried to build a program where I could sort of take a systematic approach with my patients to maximize 6 different areas where patients often get it wrong. And that would be digestive efficiency, so maximizing their gut and making sure that they're able to extract all the nutrients they can from the food that they're consuming. There's a lot of different reasons why athletes and athletic-minded people, and even patients who are trying to optimize their health, why they may not be getting the nutrients out of their food or even in supplemental form. It comes down to the gut often. And so the gut is also sort of a foundation of health in general, as you know, and has connections to the immune system and the nervous system and the hormonal network in the body as well. So I really try to work on the gut, maximize the gut. Um, Energy production is another system in my program, and that has to do with how well we can generate energy from the food that we're consuming. Um, Muscle cells have the highest concentration of mitochondria, and mitochondria are sort of a focus of not only sports optimization but also optimal health and anti-aging. So maximizing mitochondrial function and using advanced laboratory assessments to evaluate those, it's really important. Um, then I also uh, have a part of my program called cell signaling, and this is basically just hormone signaling in the body, because that dictates whether or not we're anabolic, meaning we can grow and heal, or catabolic, meaning we will be more susceptible to wear and tear in the body. So getting those hormones balanced between the stress hormones, which are generally more catabolic, and the anabolic hormones, which are um, something that will contribute to growth and healing. The other part of my program is I call structural integrity. And basically, this is looking at the microstructures in the body, not necessarily the joints and muscles, and those things are important. But I try to focus on the microstructures in the body, which are dictated by our genomics. So part of my program involves assessing patients through genomics, seeing if they have genetic mutations that might make certain enzymes in their body not work as well. So that's part of my program as well. The other part of my program is I call detox, but this is detoxifying the body from antioxidants. And this is particularly important in patients who are interested in anti-aging, and patients who are interested in, or patients who are doing a lot of endurance activity. So ultra marathoners, things like that, they have a lot of oxidative stress, oxidative damage to cells. And so I call this detoxification from those pro-oxidants in the body. So we want to get those out of the body, and we want to be able to manage oxidation in the body, and I call that aspect of detoxification. Of course, certainly there are other toxins that we are exposed to on a daily basis too, and that is also something I account for. But in the context of sports-specific medicine, it's the oxidative damage that I think is particularly important to assess, and it is something that doesn't present with any symptoms. So you have to use laboratory assessments to sort of gauge how much oxidative damage the patient is susceptible to. The last part of my program is immune response, and this is basically just optimizing immune function in the patient. And these are a lot of my patients who do intense bouts of physical activity. There is a suppressive effect on the immune system because of that. So we want to make sure that their immune system is well balanced and not overactive or underactive. So that's an important part of my program as well. So that's kind of I'm happy to dive into any of those topics in more detail if you like, but that is just kind of the big picture of my program.
I have a lot of questions. Let me see. So, with suppressing the immune system, there's a lot of people who talk about how um, endurance activities or very strenuous physical activity is actually not anti-aging, maybe because of the reason you just said. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. we generally think the general consensus is that, oh, well, I'm exercising. Isn't that good for my body? And I think not always, because when we exercise, our cortisol levels naturally go up. And if we are doing endurance exercise, ultra marathons, things like that, if we're jogging 10 miles a day, if we're doing that kind of thing and ramping up our cortisol levels for prolonged periods of time, we can see problems with immune suppression in the body, a suppressed immune response. We can also see problems with blood sugar control, because when cortisol is released, um, that generally raises glucose levels in the body. So it's why you could see patients who are endurance athletes who have poor blood sugar control, or they have a high hemoglobin A1C. It's because they have this constant or prolonged upregulation of cortisol, and that can affect their ability to recover from injuries. It can affect their ability to fight infections, and it can affect their ability to maintain a normal blood sugar. In terms of those activities, those types of activities, it's not to say that endurance activity, people shouldn't do it. It's really more to say, if you are doing the ultra marathons and the endurance activity, you need to make sure that you are having balance in your training routine. So you don't want to. You want to incorporate some things that are generally more calming, more relaxing, in between your training. You don't want to overtrain, in other words, which is not always obvious to athletes.
That's good. That's really good. So I was connecting the dots with something you said earlier about anabolic and catabolic. And it sounds as though, because you mentioned that if your body's in a catabolic state, that has to do with your hormones and the stress hormones. So I'm assuming that some of this high intensity or endurance exercise could actually make you more catabolic. What are some of the things that would lend itself to your body being more in the catabolic state?
Yes, not only physical training, endurance training, things like that, but also stress. So the stress of having an upcoming competition, or the stress of a stressful job, or family stress, things that contribute to feeling stressed overall could increase cortisol levels. And in today's world, it seems like nobody is immune to that. And some people are more in touch with that than others. But whether or not the patient is in touch with that, it does still happen in their body. And some people sort of compare their stress to a friend or a family member who's going through a really stressful time and say, no, I don't have stress. But when I check their cortisol levels, they're through the roof. So it's really, I think, something that is often brushed off by athletes, but it's really important.
Mm. When you look at, you mentioned pro-oxidants, which I had never heard of before. I've heard of antioxidants, of course, because I'm interested in aging slowly. So pro-oxidants, is that the same thing as like free radicals? And basically, what types of things can people do to reduce those?
Yes, you're exactly right. Pro-oxidants are anything that creates a free radical in the body. A free radical, of course, can is an unpaired electron that can damage cell membranes, can damage DNA, can increase the aging process, can create oxidation in the body. And oxidation is kind of like, well, if you've ever seen a piece of rusty metal, you know you have seen oxidation, and you can just sort of imagine your cells rusting when there's an imbalance between the antioxidants that protect us and the pro-oxidants that destroy us. So there's lots of different reasons why we are faced with pro-oxidants on a daily basis. Um, Environmental toxins, excessive physical activity at the extreme, of course, and there's infections and lots of different things. Imbalances in gut flora can contribute to oxidation. So it's all about getting that balance right between pro-oxidants and antioxidants. And antioxidants are what we think about getting a healthy diet, lots of colorful fruits and vegetables in the diet. You might take supplements in some cases like glutathione or resveratrol or green tea extracts or things like that. But ultimately, you really want balance. You don't want too many antioxidants because it is possible to overdo antioxidants. But you want them to match the level of pro-oxidants in your body or free radicals. You want to be able to capture those free radicals and neutralize them. It's not necessarily a more is better thing when it comes to antioxidants.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's basically how your age can sort of stay at a standstill, because if you're constantly sort of hitting this balance, you're not really going to age at the same rate as other people would. So what are some like really simple things that we can do? I feel like just all of the things we just talked about are pretty clear, and I could just rattle them off based on your system. It seems like we need to pay attention to our gut health. It seems like we need to pay attention to the amount of antioxidants in our diet. Are there other simple things we can do? And are there lab tests that you also recommend that people do if they wanted to just start somewhere to figure out if they can improve their performance?
Oh yes, there's a lot. I lean pretty heavily on laboratory testing with my patients so that I can really try to figure out what's going on in their body. And if we're thinking about trying to evaluate oxidative damage in a patient, there's three markers that really tell me a lot. And one of them is lipid peroxides, which you can measure in the urine, and it tells you about oxidative damage to cell membranes. Another is 8-OHDG, which is oxidative damage to DNA, which you can also measure in the urine very reliably. And then glutathione, which can be measured in whole blood. And they're great markers for determining, giving you some good insight about the balance between antioxidants like glutathione and pro-oxidants or the exposure to pro-oxidants, I should say, with lipid peroxides or 8-OHDG. In terms of other laboratory testing, it seems like I almost always check cortisol in my patients, in addition to all the standard blood work, the chem panel, the lipid panel, all of the conventional markers if they hadn't been checked already. But I'd always like to see cortisol levels and DHEA levels, and more than just a morning cortisol. And I think we've talked about this before, how looking at cortisol at 4 points through the day tells you a lot more than just that morning cortisol reading that's often ordered by a lot of conventional providers. So being able to see cortisol at different points through the day is important, because there is a pattern for cortisol, and generally it's highest in the morning and lowest at night. But what goes on between those 2 points are really important, and that's something I'm always checking with my patients.
Super cool. This is really awesome. Is there anything else you want to add about human performance that we should think about?
I think that diet is something that everybody can work on. And one thing that I've seen as a pattern in my patients is that not everybody is getting enough colorful fruits and vegetables. And no matter how many times you and I say it, it is something that requires consistent efforts from patients in order to really get that right. And it goes a long way, getting that those colorful fruits and vegetables. So patients hear it from us over and over, but we keep saying it because it's really important. And I think that's if you're going to do one thing or take one thing from this conversation, I think ramp up your colorful fruits and vegetable consumption. And it's really important. A lot of athletes get hyper focused on protein, and they think more is better. And it's, in terms of longevity and human performance and overall health, we can't stress it enough to eat colorful fruits and vegetables. I know it's not always the most exciting thing to talk about, but it is really important.
Love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Where can people find you online, and where can they find you if they're interested in your program?
My website is sport.com. That's short for Clinical Advances for Sport. My practice is in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'm happy to consult with patients through telemedicine as well. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me is through my website. All my contact information is there. That's ca4sport.com.
Love it. Thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Asosa. It's been a pleasure. I love the podcast. Keep doing the great work that you do, and look forward to talking with you next time.